This is Contestants Not Appearing on Stage, a weekly podcast for game show enthusiasts. Episode number 10, Antisocially Awesome, recorded January 30th, 2016. Welcome everyone to another episode of Contestants Not Appearing on Stage, a milestone episode if you will, because we actually made it to episode number 10. We are finally double digits with this madness. And it's because of you listening, all like 10 of you listening to this podcast, that allows us to continue. So thank you in advance. My name is Torgo, and let's see who joins me this week.
I'm Jordan, aka Unique Perspective, and if this were on Facebook, I'd give it a like.
My name is Adam, Rogue Geek Adam, and I now have to troll Jordan for stealing my line.
My name is Jason, aka JJMan920, and I'm very thankful to my 129 followers on Twitter. Loyal fan base, guys. Woo!
And I'm Nick. Don't shoot me. I'm just the Facebook Messenger.
The first thing we're going to talk about this week is Socially Awesome Week. The third instance of Socially Awesome Week. We'll talk about, how we thought it went, anything unique that they did. I'm going to start right off the bat by saying I was disappointed in the various You Decide picks that we had over the course of the week. They had one, maybe two good ones, but then they just kind of tapered off into obscurity by the end of the week.
I mean, I wonder if the You Decide concept is starting to get exhausted in terms of original ideas, because I feel like there's only so many elements that you would be allowed to cover with You Decide. And, I mean, obviously there's way more than 15 or 20, but because there is a finite amount, do you think at some point just the excitement of what would get stretched out and what would be worthy getting stretched out could be seen, as opposed to the mundane, like, should George Gray wear a red suit jacket or a blue suit jacket?
I would actually prefer something like that as opposed to what we got. Because the options that they gave, do you want to play Lucky 7 for a convertible or an SUV? I mean, of course the average person voting is going to want to see a convertible on the show instead of an SUV. Never mind, it's a Mazda Miata, the cheapest convertible that they offer on the show. But still, it seems like they already had what in mind they wanted to do, and they just wanted to, force the audience to pick one way or another by offering a less desirable option. Like with the guest model thing, do you want to see someone from Young and the Restless or Bold and the Beautiful? And when you have one of the people from the Young and the Restless, Melissa Ordway, show up every so often on the show regularly, of course people are going to want to pick Young and the Restless because that's something that they're familiar with already.
I mean, goes for Friday's option too. Do you want to see George's podium or George's car? I'll take the podium. I don't want to see George Gray's car. It's probably some know-nothing car.
I think the worst one of all, and I think most of you would agree with me here, is the Argentina one. And I apologize for forgetting suddenly what the second trip was, but
Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. These are trips we see all the time. It's not like they're anything special.
That one I don't mind as much, because there absolutely could be a decent divide among people who would prefer to go to South America as opposed to go to Europe. Plus,
well,
that one I think is relatively inconsequential, so I'm actually going to disagree with Adam. I actually thought that was probably one of the more okay ones.
Yeah, but I mean, they offer trips to Argentina and Amsterdam all the time.
Where would you rather offer a trip to? Frogs Balls, Arkansas?
It was just so random. That's why I was like, really? That's what it's come down to, a trip in a game we don't even know. And it was just the same as, the convertible or the SUV in terms of just who cares what gets picked. It doesn't matter.
The first Socially Awesome Week, they were pretty interesting because they actually did it on all platforms. The last two, they have decided we're just going to do Twitter and say, screw you to the rest of them. I mean,
the Instagram caption contest would like to give you a call, Adam.
Facebook caption contest.
That's not what I meant. I meant, if you remember the first one, each day had a different theme and a different platform. That I thought was a stronger concept because you're reaching out to a wider audience. Now we're just Twitter.
To be fair, maybe they just didn't receive enough of a response on the other social networks when they did it the first time.
Yeah,
that's also possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the thing with Twitter is that it's a very live thing. which is why I think the live tweeting is something that they're able to do quite frequently, because they're able to take what people are actually feeling and talking about in any given moment and use that to build content.
And that's why I think if anything ever comes back, the live tweeting should. I think that's a very great concept because you get to see a lot of interesting things, that the people are tweeting on the show.
I have no problem with the live tweeting. I just get a little suspicious when you have somebody from the staff get a live tweet that airs. It's like with all the people trying to get a live tweet on there, you're automatically holding a spot for Amber or Mike Richards or somebody else affiliated with the show. If Bob Barker had a tweeter, well, I need to learn how to talk.
Bob Barker would say tweeter.
If Bob Barker had a Twitter, he'd probably have a very high-end woofer to go with it. But if he had a Twitter account, he'd probably have like an entire day to himself of what Bob Barker thinking, like, where's my kaopectate and stuff like that 90-year-olds say.
I understand. Like they did it at the beginning of the show, which makes sense because you're giving people time to tweet. But I agree that they should leave it to just all ordinary people for the rest of the show because it's not a lot of time. The tweets are long; they scroll across at a reasonable pace so that people can read them. So
I feel like I'm watching the news.
One thing I found quite interesting this year, I feel like in the past the live tweeting was just in general tweets about, Price is Right is my favorite show, I love watching Drew, Manuela's pretty, that sort of thing. And you saw a lot of those as well this time around. But I feel like this time they let a lot of little facts show. Like a couple of people in this podcast actually put out tweets about fun facts, about cues. I put out a tweet about how you shouldn't always put the cheapest item in the mailbox for pay the rent. So I feel like they were expanding the content of the tweets this year, which I found interesting.
Maybe the selection was just better quality overall this year.
I think that's a good point too. And
you can only cull from what people provide regarding tweets.
It's true, but I do also think they were still being a little more inclusive of the fans. They know that they have the fans on different websites and forums that are more into The Price is Right than others. I think they were being more inclusive of that, and that's really appreciative because I started out the week, bringing out the generic tweets because I thought that's what would get me on, but now I'm seeing people put facts on and stuff that is more fan like, and I was like, okay, I'll start to do that, and that worked just as well. So I was very appreciative of the fact that they were catering to the more loyal fans a bit.
Do you think that having the feed of live tweets takes away from people paying attention to the main portion of the show?
I'm going to be honest, it kind of did for me, honestly, because I feel like, especially as someone who did put out a few tweets to try to get out there, I was quite focused on the tweeting to the point where if you had asked me a random esoteric detail about the show, I probably would have zero chance of naming it.
I completely agree. I think that's why I was like, I think it should come back, but like for just 1 week. Like it definitely, you're trying to read the bottom of the thing. I'm not going to pay attention to whatever joke Drew's making.
Except for Time Town.
Except for Time Town, yes.
They beat that in the ground. Well, what I'm thinking is, would you rather have them do something that's like live tweet Tuesday, where every Tuesday they did something like that, or maybe for like one half of the show, like it's 11:30, it's Tuesday, get your live tweets and we'll show the good ones, as opposed to donating a whole week to that and having Socially Awesome just introduce that as just a thing that the show does.
If you're going to do live tweeting, I think doing it for only half of a show is honestly kind of silly. Because if people want a live tweeting experience, then the idea would be to do the tweeting for the whole show. But I feel like too much regularity would take away from the fun of it, because as much as iTweet is fun, I feel like there's only so many things that you can talk about with the show via Twitter before the ideas start to get old and stale and you start to see the same tweet a few times in a row.
Would you like to see them bring back the live chat with the production staff that they had a year or two ago?
Yes.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that was really good. I think that's a great thing to bring back each Socially Awesome week, because it's always perhaps new fans or new questions that people would like to ask or talk to them about.
Especially since I feel like we're in an era where Price seems to be embracing a lot of the old school fans more. I think getting production staff with this sort of new attitude would be a really great fit.
Cool. I actually liked the Facebook caption contest. I thought that was an interesting way to get fans involved with the show. What were the prizes that you would win if yours was chosen? The prizes I remember being were actually pretty decent.
Yeah, the caption contest prizes were great. They were like a digital camera, a GoPro camera. What else did they have?
There's a tablet.
A tablet, that's right, an Amazon Fire. You got T-shirts, signed T-shirts and hats the entire week for anybody who won any day. So there were some really nice prizes. I was like, I wish I won. Oh well.
That's cool. I took a little bit of offense to one of the winning captions, but that might be just me and my.
Like, I didn't, but I can see why you did. I didn't read it the same way, so.
I guess just for a bit of context here, one of the winning captions was of a contestant wearing glasses at the big wheel, and someone would have to quote me exactly here, but the caption was something along the lines of, "It's a hybrid of Drew Carey and sadly Jesse Raphael."
I wouldn't have had a problem with it if it said hybrid, but it said love child.
I think that's harmless enough where if it were me and someone made a comparison to me, I probably wouldn't be bothered by it. But
I didn't like that somebody could win something by remarking on what a contestant looked like. That just doesn't sit well with me.
Also, if they're the love child of Drew Carey and Sally Jesse Raphael, aren't they automatically disqualified? Why are they even playing? You're clearly related to someone who works for CBS.
That's true.
But one thing that they brought back on Thursday, or I shouldn't say brought back because this is the first time that they did it, they actually went through with the announcer contest. But they didn't mention it at all. Drew mentioned it like 1 or 2 segments before, like, hey, for those of you that know, we had a guest announcer contest, and then the live tweets were like, what, you had a guest announcer contest? How was I supposed to get in on this? Because they didn't promote it at all. And they ended up choosing Mike Johnson, also known as Stanley Johnson, former 3 Strikes winner on the show. And he got to come on. He got to announce someone when they came on down. He got an item up for bids, and he was able to announce the car for Card Game on Thursday's show. And he was the contestant. For those of you that know the audition tapes, he was the one who walked backwards on the treadmill. And say what you will about his announcing abilities and how good he was or how good his audition was, throwing the treadmill in there was a stroke of genius. It really was.
I mean, the contest criteria, a good chunk of it, it was at least 33% personality, and if there was a tie, personality was the tiebreaker. So arguably the way to win was to showcase your personality, and hey, walking backwards on a treadmill, that is personable enough.
I would have been curious to see what had happened if more than one person did that.
I also think he had a great angle being a former winner on the program. That was also something that they would, enjoy bringing up if they did select him. So that was also, good for him that he was a former contestant. That also helped him, I think, in a way.
And also what someone else pointed out that doesn't partake in this podcast is that he sounds like George in a way, has same vocal mannerisms. So while it's nice to have someone as a guest announcer, it's not too much of a departure to potentially alienate fans who don't care about the contest and just tune in randomly. So
and one thing I will give them credit for is there's behind-the-scenes video of it, and they actually took Mike's role pretty seriously. He actually had, from what I could tell from the video, a pretty involved rehearsal with figuring out the camera angles and making the segment work. Where they gave him his own Price is Right behind the scenes video where he got backstage, met with the models, that sort of thing. So
he got paid to do it, so I imagine they had to treat him like that.
He's getting paid, and well, not only that, I'm sure they don't want to spend time after the show trying to add in what he perhaps missed or something. Like, it's in, the role of a Price is Right announcer is, very involved. They have to see the actual show as it's going on so they know when to announce exactly what they're going to say. And so for someone who's fresh and never done this before, they better have a pretty involved rehearsal, because I'm sure they don't want to be there hours afterwards trying to add in things in post-production.
Very, very true. So congratulations to Mike Johnson. Moving on from The Price is Right, because, all the stuff happening on The Price is Right that's particularly special is coming a couple weeks from now. We're going to move on to Jeopardy! We had the Jeopardy! Tests this past week. I think pretty much all of us took it. Most of us took it. A couple of us passed, a couple of us didn't. Which day do you feel was the most difficult of the three, and do you feel that the subjects that they touched upon for each of the tests was fair, or do you feel that it skewed too heavily towards something?
While I don't know if I can remember everything in detail, I feel like the Friday test was quite literature strong.
The Friday test that doesn't exist because there were Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday tests?
It was the last. That's why the Friday test was so tough, because it was not existent. But no, the Thursday test, it had a lot of literature stuff. I think it had more scientific stuff than the other tests, I think.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the one that I did the worst on. Which,
And I mean, the crazy part is, I felt that was the easiest test of the week. I did really well. I wish I had taken that test. I took the first day's test and I fell just short of the passing threshold, but I took the third day's test, and I made it past the threshold. I thought that was the easier test.
And I agree with you, JJ, and I actually took the Thursday test. That was the one that counted for me, and I did the best on that one, so go figure.
again, the amusing thing is that I'm probably the opposite of you all, because I took the Tuesday test for real. That was the one that I passed. And the reason why I thought the Tuesday one worked is I felt like the Tuesday one had questions that I feel like would be asked more so in the realms of quiz show and trivia, whereas I felt like the Thursday test, the questions seemed slightly more academic to me.
Do you feel like that they intentionally make one test harder than the other in order to try and cull contestants from a different region of the country more?
I don't think you could really fairly judge that, because quote-unquote hard is so subjective.
Very true.
Yeah.
It's as Chris Tarrant says in the British Millionaire. It's only easy if you know the answer. And so many people have strengths and weaknesses in different areas that unless you do something like, this is the 25th letter in the Constitution, you really can't make anything too hard.
Yeah.
And in fact, you would probably want to make sure that about the same amount of people in each region passed, so you could get a fair enough representation. Because let's say you want like 200 people from the East Coast, 200 people from the Midwest, and 200 people from the West Coast. You would probably want to make sure that enough people can pass to get those numbers.
And do you think 3 tests is enough? Do you think they should go down to 2, or they should go up to 4? I mean, there's no way to tell. There's no way to tell how many people are passing each of these tests. So maybe they've done the algorithms and figured it out that 3 tests is good, but do you think that they should have more or less?
Well, I suppose they don't need more, because I guess they feel they get enough people since they only do this test once a year. Like, I thought doing it twice a year would be fun, but they only do it once a year. And I guess that means whatever they do or how they do it, it works, and they haven't run out of, or haven't had a contestant shortage that we know of yet anyway, until they haven't changed it. So I think 3 is a fine number, and I think once a year is fine for right now.
The reason why I think it does work is they spread it out in such a way anyway, where the 3 tests are all at 8 p.m. in a certain time zone. Like 8 p.m. on the East Coast, 8 p.m. in the Central, and 8 p.m. out West.
Oh, those poor Rocky Mountain residents get shafted every single time.
That's that. Well, Denver had their own test at one point, so that's that. But no, my point being, I think part of the reason the spreading out works is that they are able to get it in a good time frame for the different regions.
Except this guy who has to go to bed early.
Yes, well, you work at a gas station at like 5 in the morning. I doubt most Jeopardy test takers are in that mold.
I mean, I'm in the situation where I haven't taken the test in 5 years, but I mean, I've always found the test harder than the show by a significant margin. I mean, the show is having gone at least slightly leaning towards a little easier than it was in the early seasons. But I mean, an interesting little factoid. Question 45 of Thursday's test about Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ta-Nehisi Coates, or whatever it was pronounced. Ironically, I learned my professor taught about him the day after the test.
And that's why you should have taken it.
That brings up a good point. Again, that's something that if you had taken the test maybe one day after you would learn that in class, you would be all over that subject. So yeah, it's absolutely subjective. Did you take the Jeopardy test, and did you pass or fail with how many questions you got right? Leave a comment down in the comments section and let us know how you did on the Jeopardy test, which one you took, and how well you perform. But we're going to stick with Jeopardy right now, and a little sublet of it that we don't talk about very much on this show, and that is Sports Jeopardy. Notable in Sports Jeopardy is they have a 14-time champion on the show. I'm going to butcher this name, so apologies if you're listening. Vinny Varadarajan, a 14-time Sports Jeopardy champion. Now, do you think that that is as impressive as a 14-time champion on the regular show because he only really needs to know one subject? Is it more impressive because you need to really know your stuff about sports, or is it not as much of a big deal because it's being a specialist in one thing and completely disregarding knowledge in any other field?
I'm stuck a little somewhere between the first one and the third one.
That's vague.
I thank you. I just feel like I've never been a big fan of Sports Jeopardy because it just doesn't feel like a true game. But if you're winning 14 games on Jeopardy, regular Jeopardy, you're something special. If you're winning 14 games on Sports Jeopardy, I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. I just don't think it's as amazing a result as it could be.
Why? Back it up.
Because you're going against people that are sports specialists. So if you're going against, it's like you can run a category of literature on regular Jeopardy because you're the only one of the three that knows your literature on stage that day, then yeah, you're going to do very well. But everyone on Sports Jeopardy really knows their stuff about sports. Yeah, you can make the argument that I know basketball more than this person, but he knows more about baseball than I do.
Well, the other thing is, just like Jeopardy, there's a number of different subjects that can come up. With sports, there are a number of different subjects that can come up. Obviously, it's not going to be as much as Jeopardy, but it's still a lot. And I think 14 is a very impressive number, especially because this is a weekly program and not a daily program. So I would hold him in regard to other long-running champions. I know that he probably wouldn't be able to keep up with a Julia or a Ken Jennings, but the fact that he can do that in this particular field makes it impressive anyway.
One of the things that I think should also be noted is in 14 games, if points were dollars, he would have won about $283,000, which to me is really impressive considering that there is pretty significantly less money on a regular board than a Sports Jeopardy board compared to a regular Jeopardy board. And the fact that he's had the equivalent of $283,000, and from what I understand, he's been able to win most of his games in lock games or runaway situations. I mean, it can be very subjective, but I mean, the fact that he's been able to prove it over 14 different games, which, as JJ said, can cover a wide variety of sports, it's very impressive for sports trivia.
I will counter that by saying I'm not trying to discount Vinny's accomplishments at all, but how much time does he have between a taping of Sports Jeopardy? Because I know with regular Jeopardy, they shoot 5 or 6 episodes in a day, and then they take the rest of the week off, and then they have to go back and do 5 more, all back-to-back. Is that something that, being a weekly show to Sports Jeopardy, to have 4 or 5 episodes in a day, or do they film one, and then they take the rest of the week off, so you're that much more well-rested in between bouts?
I think that they record not all at once, but they record a lot quickly because this is on Crackle and they probably have plenty of them ready to go beforehand. Because Dan Patrick, the host of the show is a busy person. He does Football Night in America during the football season, and he has his own daily radio program on NBC Sports and whatnot. So I have to imagine that they tape some episodes in bulk. How many? I don't know, but I'm sure he has to do it back to back at some point.
For the record, regular Jeopardy is 2 times a week, 5 shows a day, and it's only Tuesday and Wednesday. Bringing up a Crackle brings up another issue I want to just vent about really quickly. Sports Jeopardy would get a better audience, I think, if he also put it on regular old television. It would be kind of nice because I don't have Crackle. I'm not in the mood to go get it. I'd rather be able to watch the stuff on actual TV.
But in order for people to actually get Crackle, they need to put something on there that makes people want to watch it. So maybe that's what they're trying to do with Sports Jeopardy. Or maybe they focus tested it with focus groups and found out that maybe there isn't enough of an audience that would regularly watch it on regular TV, which is why they're putting it on online services only.
I mean, the thing is, you could always advertise it that if you want to watch the episode after, Because if you miss it, watch Crackle.
I mean, I'm sure. I mean, Crackle's not terrible. I don't have an account on Crackle or anything, but so I went on there and I had to sit through a couple of ads, but it's just like television. I have to imagine they really wanted to get this off the ground and they couldn't find a viable television candidate. I think, obviously ESPN probably would have been the nice choice, but I'm sure Sony mixing it in with Disney probably wasn't going to happen. So I'm sure Crackle was this nice service, and Jeopardy's done business with Crackle before. They've put up older episodes of Jeopardy on Crackle as a tie-in to Battle of the Decades tournament. I can see why they probably wanted to work with them again. I agree. It's just a way to try to get more people to Crackle, which I think is Sony owned. So Sony was probably like, hey, help us out.
That's true.
You also have to realize that I think television is shifting more towards the digital with the increased TV series on Netflix, Amazon Prime really getting in the game now with stuff like Mozart in the Jungle and Transparent. And I think a lot of the TV market is moving digital. And any sort of chance to have a digital game show, I think could be smart enough to try to conform to the market.
Do you think that this is going to pave the way then for a Netflix exclusive game show?
I think it should. I would love a Netflix exclusive game show. I have to imagine the way Netflix is going and how they're trying to expand so rapidly. I have to imagine they have that idea somewhere of a game show. I hope it gets done at some point.
I guess, see, I'm probably the exception of the rule here. I don't have Netflix. I'm really not interested in having it. And I would rather see the thing on TV.
Well, I mean, I like television. I'm kind of torn because I love Netflix. I love the automatic access. I can make up my own television schedule for my own JJ channel if I want, and I can watch an episode of the Magic School Bus and follow it up with an episode of MASH. But I'm torn in the same way that I kind of miss how big television used to be. Television ratings don't have the same impact that they do because now it was already fragmented enough with cable. Now it's even fragmented further with an a la carte service where you can choose whatever you want.
And as one more question regarding Sports Jeopardy, we have Sports Jeopardy. We've had Rock and Roll Jeopardy that was on VH1, God, almost 15 years ago? Wow.
Yes.
Yes.
What subject do you feel would be best suited for its own version of Jeopardy that they haven't done yet?
I feel like with a lot of entertainment networks out there, like EW and sort of in general entertainment focus type areas, I think some kind of like entertainment or TV Jeopardy. It's something that could work, or movie Jeopardy. Speaking of Netflix,
You're going with TMZ Jeopardy, aren't you? Today's clues are celebrities without makeup with their pictures that they do not know we took.
the views of people of contestants that appearing on stage do not reflect the actual views of people named Harvey at TMZ.
This is also true. Now, next category is identify that butt crack. But actually, what I was thinking is, do you feel like internet culture in particular has been around long enough and grown long enough that do you feel like there could be an internet-based Jeopardy based entirely on web culture?
Oh,
I think so.
Maybe not this year, but like 5 years down the line or something like that.
Even this year, because I mean, listen, web culture is just constantly growing. We can have a category hashtag Kanye beef. Kanye West got into a beef with someone last week. We've got the questions about it. Here we go. I think you could easily make a Jeopardy based around the internet because
a lot of that's because the internet doesn't have like seasons and stuff doesn't really get pulled from it. It just grows larger and larger and larger and just accumulates more information. There's no real cancellation. So once something's on the internet, unless you actively delete it and make the measures to make sure Google doesn't find it, it's there forever.
I think what I'd rather see is a game show, be it online or TV, that actually has just online contestants. I know they've tried stuff like that before with the
Web Riot.
Yeah, I mean, we've tried it. There's a really obscure old game show called Paranoia that tried this and got an online contestant, but I feel like now we're at the point, especially with things like Netflix, streaming services, Switch, that would be able to incorporate this sort of thing even further.
That's true, but At what point does it stop being a game show and just being just a game? The show takes away from the spectacle when you can just play from the comfort of your living room.
We had a situation where 1 versus 100 did the same damn thing with webcams, but regardless of the question, what's the definition of a show at some point? As we mentioned, the ever-evolving world, shows are now on the internet. Are those considered shows anymore at that point? Or, I guess that's my concern with that question.
That's true, but then again, this debate probably happened back in the 50s when families started getting televisions pretty regularly, and they're like, well, how is this different from the radio, and how is that going to change? So maybe it's just we're in the middle of another gigantic media shift that we haven't seen in about 60, 65 years.
I agree.
If you have a comment on that, again, leave it in the comments section below. And I think that's about going to wrap it up for this episode. Does anybody have any loose ends that they want to introduce before we go ahead and close the episode?
In regards to regular Jeopardy, I never pay close attention to bidding strategies and whatnot. But I've been noticing in the last month, we've had some very odd, terrible bids from contestants in Final Jeopardy. The recent 4-day champion, Fred Vaughn, I believe his name was, he was leading by a small margin going into the final, and he got it right, but he lost because he didn't bet enough to cover anybody, not even the third place player. So I didn't understand what his reasoning was behind that. Apparently he was bidding randomly anyway, but it's a weird thing seeing people blow their chances at more money because they didn't think, apparently fast enough or well enough in the however many minutes there are between the break between Double Jeopardy and Final Jeopardy.
But again, you have to consider maybe that's just a subject he wasn't very comfortable with. Jeopardy doesn't work in a vacuum, unfortunately. You can't just wager without, because otherwise they'd be like, wager what you think. You don't even need a category.
Yeah. One other thing was Wheel of Fortune had their teen best friends week, which is the first time they've had teens on the show in a while. And it was pretty entertaining. The teens were very genuine. That's what I liked about it. It was funny clearly hearing them whisper their decisions to each other on camera before they made the decisions. I know one of our podcast members did not like it as much, and unfortunately he is not here to speak on it. But I enjoyed it simply because it was something different from the norm of Wheel that we currently are in.
That's true, and sometimes that energy might be needed because Wheel does get in its ruts sometimes, as we've discussed in the past. But that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we will see you next time with hopefully more topics and hopefully a whole lot more fun. We'll see you next time. Until then, this is Torgo on behalf of everyone else. See you later. Bye-bye.
Adios.
Thanks for tuning in to Contestants Not Appearing on Stage, part of the Torgo Entertainment Network. For more episodes of Contestants Not Appearing on Stage, check us out on YouTube or online at CNAOScast.net.
You really should have done a John McLaughlin ending there.
I don't know who John McLaughlin is.
You don't?
No.
Who's John McLaughlin?
Wow.
It's clearly Sarah's brother, duh.
In the arms of an angel.
I'm so happy I have headphones on right now because Megan hates when you make fun of that song.
By the way, Torgo, you'll be amused to know, not that I'm actually going to do it, but for fun, I was researching what it would take for me to actually trademark Here's the Thing.
Okay, Taylor Swift. She's going to make a song called Here's the Thing next year.
I do it in
Featuring
my voice.
Salento.
Like, hey, listen, here's the thing. 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 I woke up with my foot rapping. I woke up with my foot rapping. And I was independent woman. I woke up with my foot rapping. I woke up with my foot rapping. And I was independent woman. That's how it's gonna go.
Is she going to regress to being 6 years old? What the hell was that?
Jeez.
Oh, I'm not in the studio. I don't have all the fancy devices yet.